Serbia is back on the streets. Tens of thousands recently marched in Belgrade in one of the biggest protests in the country's history. It's another wave in a movement driven by young people, and one that simply refuses to go away. Now, remember these scenes from last year, and these from the year before. But owning the streets isn't quite the same as winning power. So this movement is trying to become something else. It's trying to become a political force. Except
the Serbian government doesn't care about democratic legitimacy, so they do not care for how the citizens perceive the government, whether as legitimate or illegitimate. They will hold elections only when it suits them.
Nikola Buraza is the program director at the Center for Contemporary Politics, and he'll guide us through what's going on. First, a reminder of how we got here.
Well, the student movement rose from the protest which erupted after the fall of the concrete canopy on the Novi Sad railway station on the 1st of November 24. After that tragedy where 16 people lost their lives, we had several waves of protests throughout the country. And then at some point, when students who were commemorating the victims of the tragedy were attacked, this grew into a student protest, which later created these structures which are still there, with the student plenaries on every single college.
So at first, the students wanted the truth about the railway station tragedy, but they grew frustrated over the lack of accountability. And that, in the eyes of this movement, was a symbol of the wider problems with governance in Serbia.
The students during that time, despite having hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, following them, did not ask for the change of government. They did not ask for elections. They kind of even rejected that the elections would be the way out of the crisis, because they demanded accountability. They demanded a different kind of governance, not necessarily a change of government. But then at some point, after it became clear that the government will not accept their requests, that nothing will change, that the government cannot answer to their demands with anything else than violence and propaganda.
And there's been plenty of both. Tear gas, beatings, hundreds of detentions. The president even pardoned 4 men who were accused of attacking students. Yet none of this has quietened the streets. Instead, the strategy has evolved.
The student movement was pretty centralized from the start, and at some point later started going political by demanding elections and by announcing the formation of the student list, so an electoral list which will compete in the next elections, but which will not be comprised of students, but actually of non-students who the students will choose.
So essentially the building of a political party, with the students remaining the mass movement, while the people they pick take their cause into parliament.
Well, the main issues the students have focused from the very beginning, and they're still focusing on them now, are demands for democracy, rule of law, fight against corruption, organized crime, social justice. So all of these points are still here. Now we had this large rally in Belgrade a couple of days ago. We could hear speakers talking about the healthcare, education. So these issues are important for them, and these are let's call them catch-all issues. So issues where you can get a lot of support from the citizens, regardless of their ideological positions. Like, everybody is aware we have severe problems when it comes to healthcare. That there is no democracy, there is no rule of law, there is media capture, education is also threatened. So everybody can pretty much stand behind this as long as they are against, this current government.
But can the movement rally people behind it on the more contested issues in Serbian society?
So this is, first of all, the question of European integration, so the question of the EU. This is a very divisive issue in Serbia, and connected to this, there is an issue of Kosovo, which is in a way connected to European integration, but also is a very important topic in Serbia, especially on some symbolical sense. And then, of course, you have all these other issues connected to nationalism, the recent past, the wars of the 90s, etc. These are the most divisive issues in the Serbian society, and of course that you have students of all ideological positions being a part of the movement. And these divisive issues have worked in the favor of the government in the past by dividing the political opposition, by making it hard for the opposition to unite because they're pretty divided on these identity, symbolic issues. Their voters would never accept voting for, political parties who have, these completely opposite stances.
Highly sensitive issues that relate to the very fabric of Serbian society. Now, the protest movement had got by simply by avoiding them and focusing on their main demands, but now they can't, and have entered what Nikola calls a minefield.
We had some controversial statements concerning Kosovo, concerning Republika Srpska and Bosnia and Herzegovina, which were not only accepted in a very negative way by one part of society, but they also prompted responses from other parts of the student movement. So these issues are very divisive. They are dangerous to the student movement internally. They are very dangerous to the student movement when it comes to the votes the student list might get. So the thing is that the more these issues are avoided, the better it is for the student movement. And it's going to be quite a challenge, how to continue until the elections, focus on these broader issues which unite people and try to avoid, all these different ideological stances which might be detrimental.
Meanwhile, the Serbian government is playing dirty in response. It isn't afraid to weaponize sensitive matters of identity.
Well, the government is still using toxic nationalism as the main propaganda tool against the students. The pro-government media are accusing the students of being terrorists, of being using derogatory terms for them. Ustaše, which is a derogatory term for Croatians, is a movement from Second World War, which is very symbolically heavy. This term is very heavy. These graffiti against students are everywhere across the city. So their main narrative is that the students are traitors, basically, that they're terrorists, that they are anti-Serbs, and that they are allied with Serbian enemies. So they're still using this propaganda against the students because the voters of the government are mostly conservatives and nationalists.
Yet the protests have not lost steam overall. Nikola says it's not merely about how well they can organize.
It says a lot about desperation that exists here in Serbia. People are desperate for some time now about the general direction in which the country is going in terms of, increasing autocratization, the culture of impunity, rampant corruption, etc. But at the same time, the citizens felt that they could not punish the government for the direction it takes because we don't have, free and fair elections.
It's really about taking back power. So which way is this heading? Now, the students have been pushing for early elections, but the government decide when they're held, and it seems they're in no hurry.
Well, the government is not standing well if you look at the polls, if you also look at the streets of Serbia today. I expect them to postpone the elections until the very last moment, so until the regular election date at the end of 2027. And in the meantime, the student movement will, pretty much be engaged in election campaign, which already started in a way, regardless of when the elections are going to be held, and attempt, to create, foundations for victory in these elections. Of course, the main question, in my opinion, is what the relation between the students and the opposition is going to be, because this might affect, the results of the elections to a large degree. The student list is almost certainly going to be the strongest opposition actor, but to win against this government, to be able to form the next government, you need every vote in the election.
Serbia's students have already done something rare. They've filled the streets and forced themselves into the political arena. But turning protest into power means navigating divisions, building alliances, and competing on rules they don't control. In the months ahead, ahead, the real test will be whether this movement can turn momentum into something that really lasts. Because the real battle in Serbia is now moving from the streets to the ballot box.